Okay, so this is gonna be fun and a first for me. We're going on a walk and I'm gonna talk. So, first off, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of my world building stuff in the Antihero of Athena. So one of the important parts of the book are empaths. So empaths are people who can read other people's emotions and feelings and motivations, and they vary in strength. So some of them rely mostly on body language and expression to get an accurate idea of what the other person is feeling and thinking. And other empaths, some stronger ones, are able to, actually go into people's minds and pull out precisely what they're thinking. So, in the world of the Antihero of Athena, empaths are seen as dangerous. They're seen as threats. So, anytime someone is discovered to be an empath, they're immediately enslaved. The most common use for empaths is using them as lie detectors. An empath can analyze someone's expressions, their feelings, their thoughts, and tell if they're lying or not. So it's pretty common practice for businessmen and just businesses in general to have an empath around to make sure the people they're negotiating with are telling the truth. So it's common for politicians to have one. So the ruling council of Athena, the Soul Council, all of them have empaths. Also, I wanted to talk about some of my side characters, some of the more prominent ones. First off would be Roy Lane. He was friends with Myra. They were in the army together, so they know each other pretty well. They haven't seen each other since Myra was pulled out of the army. He more or less sides with the council. Not exactly great guy. What I mean by he sides with the council is not that he's on their side, but that he believes similar things, especially regarding empaths. Pretty much everyone in the world agrees on empaths. There are very few people who disagree. Myra is one of the people who disagrees. So she and Roy kind of knock heads a little bit over that. Other side characters. We also have Tali. She is from Proma. She's Promish. She's the leader of an anti-council organization. But like Roy, she believes they're right about empaths and all that crap. Roy is part of Tali's organization. So the anti-council organization is not entirely anti-council, at least for a while. Even towards the end of the book, there's still some parts of it that aren't fully against everything the council stands for, which makes it less of a black and white situation. What else do we have? We have Atan. Atan is from Glayberg. He's Glay. He is part of the royal family, but was sent as a hostage to Athena when Athena took Proma from Glayberg. So he's been under the council's thumb for a little bit. Not exactly a cheery fellow. He doesn't really have a lot of faith in people, mainly because he's been betrayed so many times. He's kind of important to the story, still technically a side character, but not quite main character energy. He's not exactly along for the ride. He's a pretty powerful person. On the topic of empaths, we have a couple empaths in the story, like named in the story. So Myra's husband Kirsten is one of them. He marries her because she's a free citizen, and he gets his freedom if he marries a free citizen. So he marries her. The other empath named in the story is Beth. She's owned by Tali. Myra's married to an empath. Tali has an empath. They don't see eye to eye on that sort of thing. So Myra's like, this is my husband. He's free. You need to respect him. And Tali's like, girl, I own an empath. I don't care. So that's a source of conflict. I would say Beth and Kirsten do become friends. Like they do get along. Beth doesn't show up a whole lot, but you know, she pops up every now and then in the story, and it's always, you know, she's coming to check on Kirsten. They're just chatting, sort of thing. Empaths consider themselves like a different people group, even though, right, they're from a whole bunch of different nations. Like there's Anthenian empaths and Promish empaths and Glay empaths and Shobraxi empaths, but they don't really define themselves by nationality. They define themselves by their abilities. So they have their own culture. One aspect of empathic culture that's brought up in the book is that if empaths notice that two people have an emotional bond or a strong relationship, think along couple lines, like a strong romantic relationship. If an empath notices that there are two people like that, they address them as one person. Myra and Kirsten develop a strong emotional bond because they're married and they fall in love with each other. Beth notices that, so she treats them like one person. She doesn't differentiate between them with names. She just talks as if just one person. She mostly just talks to Kirsten because, right, he is part of her people. So the respectful thing to do is to just talk to your people whenever possible. Myra is offended by it. Kirsten explains, hey, no, this is our culture. She was respecting you. She was respecting us. It's a moment of realization for Myra. She realizes, oh, I am seen by someone who can read emotions as the other half of my husband. And that's sort of like the catalyst for her to allow herself to fall in love with Kirsten. It's kind of a breakthrough moment for her, learning about this part of empathic culture. That plays a pretty big role in the overall plot of the book. Any other side characters that are worth mentioning? There's one more kind of important council member besides Olivia. His name is Jonas Furway. He's the decent council member. At least that's how Myra thinks of him. He's on the nicer side. He's not as blatantly evil or cruel, but he is still on the council. But he does use his influence in good ways some of the time. Just enough of the time that Myra likes him much better than all the others. Whereas Olivia is like, oh, Myra, you're dying. Haha, that's funny. Let's use you until you die, sort of thing. Jonas is kinder. He doesn't think it's funny that Myra's dying. He doesn't want to take advantage of her. He doesn't want to see her go back to war and die. Like, I think he actually enjoys having her around. I wouldn't call him her friend by any means, but he's not the heartless killer that Olivia is. So that sets him apart for Myra. There's no magic system in this world because it is technically sci-fi. But power Myra has acts sort of like magic, but I just call it her power. Power is literally just the only word I use to describe it. There's no other name for it. It's not much other than a power. It's just like a destructive force that she uses to kill people. I do often use the metaphor of weaving to describe her power. So she can weave it into people's bodies. She can weave it from one object to another to create a bridge or anything like that. So it can be a weapon or a creative tool. She thinks of it mostly as a weapon. She's like, this is how I kill people, this is how I survive. As the book goes on, her perspective slowly changes into realizing, hey, I can use this thing for good. I don't have to keep killing people with this. I can make beautiful things. I can make useful things. I can help people instead of just hurt them. And part of this realization comes from the mentor figure in the book, Shakir. Shakir is probably around 50. He's Promish. He's also part of Tali's anti-council group, and he's well respected there. Part of his respect comes from the fact that he is a healer. Healers, like empaths, acquire their abilities naturally. They just manifest at a certain age. It's different for everyone. But unlike empaths, healers are very, very respected and wanted within communities. So what healers can do is they can, by touch, tell where someone is hurt and knit them back together. They can repair bones, muscle, skin, anything. Of course, like empaths, there are different levels of healers. Some are more powerful than others. Shakir is a more powerful healer. He doesn't even have to touch people necessarily to tell what's wrong with them. When we meet him in the book, he can tell that Myra has this power just by looking at her. Shakir's really important for Myra's relationship to her power and also her relationship to Kirsten, because Shakir was married, went through a super ugly divorce, and then he meets Myra and Kirsten, this newlywed couple, and he's like, hey, I want you guys to stay together because you need each other. I can see already you need each other, even if you've only been married for a couple days. Like, I can tell how much you need each other. So he's really an encouragement to Myra in that area of her life, but he also counsels her on her anxiety about dying, leaving Kirsten alone, because, you know, once she accepts, right, like, oh, we're in love, we're bonded sort of thing, I'm gonna break his heart when I die. That makes her really fearful. Shakir's most constant advice to her is to stop trying to control her husband and to let him make the decision about whether or not he wants to love her, whether or not he wants to get his heart broken. His logic is, you freed him. By marrying him, you acknowledge that he is his own person and that he should have the right to make decisions about himself. And because you married him, that means you also gave him the right to make decisions about how he feels about you. You shouldn't try to dictate that. You shouldn't try to control him. If he wants to love you, that's his choice. You need to let him do that. And And it's really difficult for Myra to accept because she hasn't been in control for such a long time. And now she's out of the council's control. She has her life to herself. She gets to be the only one controlling her life. And she realizes her absence of control for so long is what's making her want to control Tierston. I'm planning on designing a map soon. I don't know how good it's going to be. I'm not exactly a cartographer or that great of an artist, but we'll see what we can do by hand or digitally, just to give you all a general idea of where the countries are, how big they are, and some more of a geographical and political idea of what's going on. I'll be working on that probably in the next few days. I think that is it for today. I will see you guys in the next video.